we definitely have a filter of sorts that, I'm not just the mom that's like, oh yeah, read whatever you want. Because while I don't shy away from exposing my kids to certain things or ideas or concepts or the world, I don't go out of my way to just throw it at them all day long, right? Or allow them to be exposed to it all day long. So even though there's exposure, it's a limited, it's not like here it is all the time. You know what I mean? So there's a difference there. So one example is during the habits class that Greg teaches, they read a book called The Choice by Edith Eger, she was a concentration camp survivor. And in the book, it's telling her life story, and it talks about, well, things that happen, including rape and, other bad things that happen. And so we did have a comment from a mom at one time saying, I don't want my kids reading this because, it's uncomfortable and it's not fun. And so our approach with that was like, well, yeah, I get it. But we do have to be exposed to those types of things. And now this, of course, is a class that's like 15, 16, 17, it's older ages. It's not 12, 11, 12, 13. And so we talked through the reason why we need to read books like that. And we need to know, like, this stuff really went on. It's not comfortable. It's not fun. They had to live through it. We're just reading about it, right? It's a totally different thing. But that to me is very different than my kids, even if they're 15, 16, or 17, reading a book that just has tons and tons of sex and rape or violence or all of these things. Like, that to me is a whole nother level. So I guess I hope maybe that illustrates it. Like, if it has some of that into it, especially if it was, real, it happened, it was part of story, then that's fine. But if it's filled with that just for the sake of being filled with that, because it's sensational and it's what it can be addicting to people, just like pornography could be, that to me crosses the line. When my kids were younger, I was the one kind of filtering the books, trying to find the good series and all of that. Now I fully trust my older kids, and so they will do it, and they will pick books and they'll listen to it and they'll be like, yeah, I'm going to return that one. That wasn't a good one. And so they kind of let me know. In fact, I'm having my daughter, Aaliyah, she read 108 books last year. We just copied and pasted her list, and we're formatting it. So she's going to have this list of like all of this, because she loves the fantasy series and she loves everything. And so we're putting that together, this whole list. So I totally trust her view and take on that. I get it. The way books are written nowadays, I think they're well written, but they are definitely more entertaining. And when you try to read an older book, it's like torture sometimes. And I would even say, for me, I was laughing because when you're talking about Lord of the Rings, I couldn't read Lord of the Rings. I liked The Hobbit. I could not read Lord of the Rings. I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it. And then we're also reading this book list of classic books, and it goes in like chronological order. It comes from Susan Wise Bauer. She has a book called The Classical Education You Never Got, or something like that. And in it, she recommends reading this whole list of books by genre and then in chronological order, as supposed some great way of reading the books. Anyways, we've started reading it, and it started with Don Quixote. It's painful to read Don Quixote. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I just think it's hard. For those types of books, I am completely willing to pay my children to read them. Like, straight out. You don't want to read that? I will pay you. Now, I also don't, like, I'm not asking my 13-year-old to read Don Quixote. Like, it would like kill your love of reading. It's that painful to me. So for him, I'm totally encouraging the fun reading, because that's how you get the love of reading. Like, I'm going to let him love reading. And so if he wants to sit in his bed all day and read, great, he can do that, which is what he's doing right now, because he's actually doing a device fast. So he sits in his bed and read, and I'm like, fantastic. But I'm going to pay him to read the things that are here. This is what he's loving and liking. This one, like for him right now, White Fang. It's still interesting, still a good story, but it's a little bit more challenging because it's not the fun level of the books you're talking about. I will pay him to read that book. I actually will ask them how much they want me to pay them. And if it comes back at a number that I'm okay with, I'm like, okay, I will. If it comes back way out there, I'll respond with a counter offer and be like, oh my gosh, no, that's way too much. I can't afford to pay you that much. And I'll come back with, a counter offer. So I literally will negotiate with them. But I start by asking them because I want to get a feel of where they're at. I want to fill them out because I also don't want to offer more than, sometimes they'll say less than I was going to say. And I'm like, okay, great. I'll pay that much. So I really do just ask them. But I'm also willing, here's the thing, when you start out doing this, you're going to end up paying more than you would later on, because after they get over the inertia of reading these books they don't want to read, and then they realize, oh, actually, it wasn't that bad and I enjoyed it, then it's not as much of a hurdle for them to do it the next time. And so it actually becomes either cheap or free. You don't have to pay them anymore, because now they're like, yeah, I like the books you recommend. So like my older kids that are 17, 18, I mean, I don't have to pay them for books because they've gotten so into the habit of reading even challenging books that they willingly take on those books now. But to start out, yeah, I was willing to pay good money, right? I mean, I don't remember, but I don't think we've ever paid more than like $50, but I've been willing to pay 20, 30, $40 for them to read something. So when I can see my child and know that they need a certain thing, like a certain idea or concept that is in a book I've read, I will strategically say, I will pay you to read this book because I know they need it.
Yeah.
So that's a very specific strategy that I have used a ton that I think works amazing, because what happens is our kids, all of us, not just our kids, we often learn better from other people than we do from our parents or our spouse. And we talked about this last time. If you can get a third party to say the thing you've been saying, now suddenly it becomes their idea because they got it from somewhere else instead of you. And so they adopt it as their own, and they change their own behavior because of this book or this podcast or whatever. So yes, absolutely use that strategy. And in those cases specifically, especially if I know it's really going to help them and they really need it, I'm willing to pay more in those situations. So like I'll be like, you know what? I know you've got a lot of books. I really think you need to read this one. I'm willing to pay you, more to read it. So,
yeah.
And that's something that's worked very, very well with all of our kids. It's super powerful.